This video is on interval notation. Make sure you've already watched the videos on one variable inequalities, solving and graphing to be prepared to do interval notation. The best way to use this video is to take notes while I'm teaching. Pause the video as often as necessary, and every time you arrive at a you try, pause and attempt the problem. When you press play, the solution along with any work would be shown. In this video, we'll cover the following topics. We'll begin with talking about infinity. Infinity is the idea that something has no end. In mathematics, we use the following symbol for infinity. On a number line, you can see positive infinity, or numbers that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and negative infinity, numbers that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So when we look at solutions of inequalities, we've got x is greater than -1. We've already learned that we can express these solutions with graphs. That would be an open circle, and it would be going in the direction towards positive infinity. Because x can't be -1, but it can be greater than. So it can be 2 or 4,234,120. We can also express the solution in interval notation. When we look at interval notation, we're going to use an open dot as a parenthesis representing not including. And because this guy is going all the way to infinity, we're going to write infinity. And that is interval notation. We'll do 2 more completed examples, and then we'll go through the rules. So if we've got a solution x is less than or equal to 2, that can be expressed as a graph with a closed circle and the arrow moving towards negative infinity. X can be 2, but anything less than 2 is also okay, like -15 or -2,345,231. When we're writing interval notation, we're going to say, hey, it's going to go all the way to negative infinity, but stop at 2, and it's going to include the number 2. So negative infinity and 2, we'll use a bracket to represent including. When we express solutions of inequality using interval notation, sometimes called set notation, these are the following rules. We use a bracket for a closed circle or less than, greater than, or equal to. We use a parenthesis for an open circle, and we also use a parenthesis for infinity. So let's take a look at some examples. Write the solution in interval notation. I always recommend marking up the graph so that you can see. So when we look at this graph, I see that it's going towards negative infinity. And I see that it's a closed circle, which means it's going to be a bracket. Now, negative infinity comes first because we always go from left to right, and it always has a parenthesis. And the next number is 1, and it's a closed circle, so it's a bracket. And that's a solution in interval notation. When I look at the second problem, the arrow is pointing towards infinity. So the first thing I see is actually that open circle. And it's an open circle, so it's a parenthesis. So it's going to be a parenthesis. The first thing I saw was a 5 from left to right. And then infinity. And then infinity always gets a parenthesis. So now they want us to graph the solution and then answer it in interval notation. So I know that it's going to be a closed circle at -3, and the arrow is going to point in this direction. Now if they want interval notation from left to right, the first thing I see is negative infinity, and then a closed circle, so that's going to be a bracket. So this would be negative infinity to -3 bracket. Here we've got an open circle at +3, and it's going in this direction for greater than. So the first thing I see from left to right is this open circle, so that's a parenthesis, and it's going towards infinity. So I've got a parenthesis 3, infinity always gets a parenthesis, and that's interval notation. Go ahead and give these a try. Press play when you're ready to see the solution. Let's do a few more examples. In this, the direction says they want an inequality. So the answer is going to have a less than or a greater than or something like that. And they're saying to use a graph. Now, I didn't ask for a graph, but that might be helpful. So this is interval notation, and I'm going to use a graph to help me. So I know that it's going towards negative infinity because it says that, and I know that it's stopping at 2. Now, I'm just going to put some numbers around it to help me. And because of that parenthesis, I know it's an open circle, and because of that negative infinity, I know it's going this way. Now, I know that inequalities always have a variable, and a number. In this case, the number is going to be 2. It's where the dot is. I know that it's not going to have a bar underneath it because it's an open circle, and it's pointing in this direction, so this is the inequality. These can be a little more challenging. So again, we're going to take a look here. We're going to draw a graph to help us. We see we've got the number 1, and it's going towards infinity. I'm just going to put some numbers around it. And then it's a bracket, so I know it's a closed circle, and it's going towards infinity. So I know that inequalities have a variable in the number, and it's going towards infinity with a closed circle. Let's take a look here. So I've got the number 5, and it's going towards infinity. So around 5, I've got that parenthesis, so I know it's an open circle going in this direction. So if they want an inequality, I know that it's got an x and a 5, and it's going in that direction with an open circle. Last one, I know it's going towards negative infinity and stopping at 3. Bracket means a closed circle on that number, and it's going in this direction. So I know that it's going to have an x and a 3, it's going in this direction, and a closed circle, so that's the inequality. Go ahead and give these a try. Press play when you're ready to see the solution. And we're going to do just a few more examples. These are compound inequalities. So that means that x is between two numbers. So they ask, write the solution in interval notation. So when I take a look at this, I see that I've got a closed circle and a closed circle. I don't have any infinities here because x is between negative 10 and 5. So x is between negative 10 and 5, and that is the interval notation. Here I've got something similar. I've got a bracket and a parenthesis, so it's going to be bracket 5, 7, parenthesis. These say they want a graph and an inequality. Remember, inequality means it's going to have an inequality symbol. So we're going to draw a graph. Now I have two numbers here, so I've got negative 2 and 0. So I've got a parenthesis is an open circle, a bracket is a closed circle. So I've got an open circle and a closed circle, and I know that x is in between. So I know that x is in between negative 2 and 0. Open circle, closed circle. So that is the graph and the inequality. Let's try another. We've got negative 5 and negative 3. Bracket, bracket means they're both closed circles, and that x is in between them. So x is in between them, and they're both closed circles. The inequality symbol for compound inequalities and inequalities are always less than or equal to. Our last one is 1 and 5. I've got a bracket and a parenthesis, and in between, so I know that x is in between 1 and 5, closed circle, open circle. Go ahead and give these a try. Press play when you're ready to see the answers. And that concludes our video on interval notation.